Kia ora. Welcome to another episode where we share relevant content to help tourism and hospitality businesses thrive. Join us each week as we share insights and hear from industry specialists. We hope you enjoy this week's episode, and to stay up to date, why don't you click the subscribe button to get notified when a new video drops. Now we welcome you to sit back and enjoy this week's episode.
Hello and welcome back. Now, I have a question to ask you. If you've got a tourism business, have you ever considered what it will take to be sustainable? Now, I know I struggle with this concept, and it is a hot topic at the moment. We're really having to change the way that we do business, and sustainability, protecting our environment, and leaving our planet in a better place is really, really important. But how do we apply that to our own business? Now, here on the Top of the South, we are about to launch a Top of the South sustainability workshop starting next week. And I thought it was a perfect opportunity to bring the two presenters that will be touring the Top of the South to present today, so that you can get a little bit of a head start. And if you happen to be in the region, could actually come and join us. So I'm excited to welcome Megan and Gisela to the floor today. Hey guys, how are you?
Hi, great, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Good to be here.
Look, and in the spirit of sustainability and this topic, it's great that we can do this virtually.
Yeah, very good. Low carbon.
Yeah, thank you. Low carbon footprint. Yeah. Look, I'm going to confess, I really struggle with this topic. It is something that we're hearing more and more about. And you are both sustainability advocates for Tiaa. And, that just says something to us that there is a need to be having these conversations. But before we talk about sustainability, and before I guess, confess how much I don't know, do you want to just tell me a little bit about Tiaa's role in the tourism industry for those that may be watching?
Sure, I can handle that. So Tiaa, Tourism Industry Aotearoa, it's an industry association. So we're not government funded at all. We are the industry voice for tourism. So for all of those thousands of mum and dad operators out there around the country, right through to the large operators like THL, like Air New Zealand, like our airports. So all of those businesses in between, we are the industry voice. So we take industry issues and we advocate for, or any kind of problems or niggles that people have got, we take those to government and try and sort them out on behalf of industry.
So great. So we are in perfect hands right now, because we're going to be troubleshooting potentially my business's sustainability goals, but really just starting to understand a little bit more about what it means to a tourism business to, I guess, follow a path of making change, essentially. Mm. So let's talk about sustainability and businesses. So I guess the question is, why should a tourism business be thinking about sustainability?
It's a big question. I think first you almost think, what does it mean to be sustainable? And people often think about the environment straight away. And so I think what's quite important to understand is Tiaa developed a tourism sustainability commitment several years ago, and that covers economic sustainability. If you're not economically sustainable, you can't do any of the other good stuff. So it's economic sustainability, looking after our visitors, having visitor sustainability, also community sustainability. You might remember pre-COVID, there was sometimes some pushback against too much tourism. How do we make our locals love our tourism businesses and include them and involve them in it? And of course, environmental sustainability as well. So it covers all four facets. It's not just environmental sustainability. And if we want to be here for the long haul, we need to tick all four boxes.
And so the TSC that we developed in 2017 was made as a free program. That's the Tourism Sustainability Commitment, a free program so that all businesses could follow a framework so that they could know what to do, how to do, all of the big things that people go, oh gosh, I don't know how to do that. It's all broken down and there are templates and tools and case studies that people can learn from on that website. So that's sustainabletourism.nz. So it's a free program to sign up to. So that's why Tiaa developed that program, so that businesses had a place to go to. They didn't have to pay for it. You could just go on there, learn what to do, see what's relevant for your own situation, and then start making little changes, little actions, because lots of little things add up to change over time.
I love that. Now, one thing we will do is we will pop the link into the chat for people to have a look at in their own time. And I love that it's free, but I'm going to play devil's advocate here. But as a business, is it free? Like, when we think about making change, we think about costs, and we know that sometimes. Now I'm going to take, for example, and this is again where you're going to shoot me down. No, not shoot me down, but just know my limitations. When I think about organic food, right, it's more expensive. When we think about doing something that's for the environment, I'm going to put it in the organic category. There's a cost. So how do we talk about changing our mindset so that it doesn't feel like, we're doing good, but is there a way we can do it without spending money?
Well, I'll give it a start. Megan can jump in. I mean, there are definitely some steps that you can take which won't cost you money. And so sometimes, especially at the moment, look for the quick wins. And that's what we can, in these workshops, we would be working through. What are some of the easy little steps you can take? But still keeping in mind the long term, and what are some of the bigger, longer term plans that you can work towards. But I think the bigger picture is to think, well, what's the cost of not doing this? If you don't make your business sustainable, where will you be in 5 years' time? And so it's really, there will be trade-offs and working out where you invest your money. And there will be some costs, but also some savings. But yeah, it's balancing all that off.
What would be an example of something that a business could do as a first step?
So I think, yeah, there's a siren.
You can't change a life, okay? So
no.
If it happens, it happens.
Siren. Yeah. So a good example of something that people can do as a good first step that's free is to start measuring your impacts. So you can measure your carbon footprint, you can measure what you give back to a community or what you give back to the environment. So we've had this kind of focus for a couple of 100 years on economics and how much value, GDP, what are you making financially in your business? But we don't look at other things. We don't value other measurements. And it's time that we all start measuring things. And to be able to manage something or improve it, you've first got to start measuring it. So we encourage people to start spreadsheets for other things in their business. And we know that most, if not all, little businesses in New Zealand are giving back to their community. They're on the school board, they're giving vouchers to this and for raffle tickets for that, and they're volunteering here, there and everywhere, but they're not measuring that that stuff that they're giving back to the communities. So a really good start, which is completely free, is to write that stuff down. What do you do annually? And then that's something you can demonstrate. This is what I actually give back to my community annually. You might choose to do that in hours. You might choose to just do it in what you do. So that's something that's really important, to start measuring non-financial metrics.
And I like that because that's really easy. That actually makes that's actually a reminder of the good that you do in your community as well.
Yeah, and it also.
When you've got that information at your fingertips, you can share those stories so much better with your locals, but then also with your visitors, that they understand that you are more than just what they see in the tourism business, but you have a much broader impact on your community and your environment. And sharing those stories, if that's through social channels or when you're on giving a tour and you slip these stories into your conversations, that's something that consumers are getting more and more and more interested in, and really knowing what's the impact of all this activity that's going on, and being able to share that's really powerful.
Yeah, and in this day and age, also supporting local businesses. So, if your business, you've got a bit of supply chain, say you're a bed and breakfast or something, so that you're telling the stories that I made this jam, that I bought, I'm buying this bread from the local, the lady who makes bread 3 times a week down the road. So you're telling that you're supporting local, and then you're telling that story that, because it's actually investing back in your community. So people will already be doing that, but they're not thinking of that as a community sustainability initiative or supporting their community.
And I guess I'm besides the fact that someone's obviously had an accident in Wellington. It's not something that has dawned on me as the community aspect when you say the word sustainability. I mean, it just doesn't. It doesn't. It's not something that
when we talk about sustainability, generically over the years, it's been economic, environmental, and social. But when we looked at putting the TSC together, we looked at the Sustainable Development Goals. So that's the UN's ones that are quite international. But we looked at, and we made it specific for New Zealand, our sustainability commitment, and we also made it specific for tourism. So by doing that, we split the social kind of goals into visitor ones and community ones. And so, as Gisela said earlier, that's really important because we want to be looking after our visitors, but we also want to look after our communities, and we want our communities to love visitors coming to our regions. And as we know, pre-COVID, there was some regions that didn't love some things so much. There were bottlenecks in some places. And so that's a sure sign of some things in the tourism system not being well connected with community. So we need to really be mindful that as a tourism business, we rely on those communities. We rely on the manaakitanga of our, the hospitality and the warmth from our locals. So we need that. That's part of being a sustainable business, making sure our community is happy with our business and what we're bringing.
Yeah, totally. And right now with COVID, in whether we like it or not, it created that reset button essentially. So we've now got a clean slate. And I think, Gisela, you indicated that the fact that we've got these, if we measure it, like Megan says, we've got these stories to tell. And what we're learning about the new traveller is they want authenticity. They want to know what's going on, and they want to feel that their money is not just coming in and going offshore. It's not being used and abused. It's actually providing real value to the community.
There's lots of studies being done at the moment on travel trends and how that's changing. So consumer priorities are changing in general, and then around travel as well. And we're hearing more and more about flight shaming, and Australian visitors, even that's a reasonable flight, but our Germans, British, American visitors that have got a long haul flight, if they're going to make that flight and they're environmentally conscious people, we want them to feel really good about their holiday in New Zealand. And we don't just want to greenwash it. We don't want to just put a plaster on top of it. We really want to have good, authentic experiences here that make it worthwhile coming out as things change pretty quickly.
Yep. Now, I have to ask the question, can you define greenwash for me? Because I had to look it up. So I know that you two are just the brains of sustainability and the words that come out. What is greenwashing?
Greenwashing is I'm trying to think of a really good example now, and I'm struggling, but if you is when you make something sound like it's environmentally good when actually it's not. So you might get a coffee cup and a single-use cup that says compostable on it, but then you just chuck it in landfill anyway. So it's not going to decompose in landfill. You haven't put it in a proper composting bin. So although you kind of felt like you were using a single-use compostable cup, if you don't actually compost it, it's just a waste of time. And so that's kind of greenwashing. It's not really doing the right thing. So if you've then got a...
So I'm going to ask you this. So do you feel that potentially that's what has been happening in our industry?
not just our industry, the whole of New Zealand.
Oh,
you know, like the
yeah,
whole,
totally.
you know, everywhere.
We're not bringing Tourism New Zealand into this. Okay, we're just not going to talk about the pure New Zealand brand.
Yeah, so I think absolutely, you can see greenwash everywhere. You know, the health and beauty industry is one that, you know, people don't even realise until you think about it. But you look at the products in the supermarket, the words they use on shampoos and you know, face products, and it's all green, and then you read the products, they're not green products, but they're just capitalising on that word. So that's, you know, greenwash is happening everywhere. In the tourism industry, I've seen it where operators do say, oh, look, we're sustainable, we do, but there's no demonstration of how they're sustainable. They're just using the words that people might be interested in. So it's really important that businesses are authentic, that they are, if they're talking about sustainability and they want to do it, that they're demonstrating what they're doing, not just talking about doing something.
Do you think the consumer is getting smarter about it?
Oh, yeah, very, very much so. And New Zealand consumers are, and international consumers will be getting smarter even faster. So very much so.
Yeah, I do feel, and please quote me if I'm wrong, I do feel that whilst we live in a beautiful place, we aren't necessarily the early adopters, and there's countries that are just so far advanced and their thinking is so far advanced that by coming here they'd probably feel that we are a little behind.
For years, I mean, Europeans have been recycling batteries since, you know, for 30 years. And we still don't really in New Zealand. You can, but not easily. You know, those who have travelled would have seen in supermarkets all through Europe and different countries, you can, you know, there's a place to put your used batteries. And, you know, so we're a long way behind on a lot of things. Recycling, you know, our recycling's gone backwards in the last 3 or 4 years in New Zealand. So that's why we've got to think about the whole cycle of waste and not rely on recycling, because recycling is not the answer, right? Recycling is an interim measure. We actually need to look at how can we use, you know, offer our service, our product without creating waste in the first place. So that's, you know, we just need to shift our thinking.
Now, I laugh about recycling because before COVID, we were told that our glass was going to be recycled here in Marlborough. We were one of the test cases for recycling glass, and we were going to get 10 cents a bottle. So I spent 12 years in South Australia and we'd get 5 cents a bottle. So I was like, woohoo, 10 cents a bottle. So as most people during lockdown, consumption was high. We threw nothing out. I tell you, we threw absolutely nothing out. So there was quite a large amount of bottles it was a year. We kept it for a year, waiting for the council to tell us that they were going to reinstate this recycling initiative, and they never did. So we had to shamelessly take all our bottles to our recycling because we don't get it collected. But I want to flip that over in regards to a business here that actually crushes the glass down and puts it on their pavement. So that's Lockmara Lodge. So they have a process where they crush all the bottles down and they use it as pavement.
Fantastic.
So I
that's
thought I'd
taking
just
the product full
Yeah.
circle. I mean, it comes from sand, so you take it back to sand. We also work with operators, you know, in larger kind of you know, cafes or hotels where it's like, actually, do you need so many bottles, or is it time to get wine in a keg and have a house wine? So that's another way that you can actually, you know, if you've got going through quite a quantity, probably not something to do at home to encourage having a keg of wine, but but in a hospitality setting, you know, that's a really great way for them to reduce.
Maybe someone in Auckland right now could do with a keg of house wine.
Yeah, perhaps.
Poor people. Yeah. So tell me, as your role as sustainability advocates, how do you get involved with tourism businesses? Where do you step in? Do you guide them? Are you here to stand up for them around the sustainability? Where does it all fit in?
Look, we have got this framework, and which we fall back on. You know, that guides our work, but it's a whole journey. Nobody's got all the answers. Technology is changing fast. Wasn't it just last week there was an electric flight from Blenheim to Wellington and an electric aircraft?
Take that. We'll take that. Thank you.
Take that. Things are changing really, really fast. So it's a journey. Everybody is on, every business and every individual is on this journey of how can we do it better. And this framework helps guide people, but people and businesses will step in at different places of what's appropriate for them, where technology can help them at the moment, or what they might have to wait for a year or two to actually become realistic and feasible. So it really is this journey. But what we're aware of is that COP26 is happening in Glasgow at the moment. It's not that far down the track that there will become government regulations around things, that especially around things like the carbon accounting, that you'll have to do that alongside your GST return. And we're trying to help businesses get on top of things before regulations are imposed, so that you've got a bit more control over how you get to that point.
Yeah. Because the thing, I guess the reality is that we haven't had to worry about it. So therefore we haven't had to think, and we've not had to do. And by not being in that position where it's not, I guess what you're saying, Gisela, is that there's going to be a point where some of this measurement and understanding of our use is going to be pushed upon us, and we're going to get charged for it, essentially, aren't we?
Absolutely. In the carbon space, for sure. I mean, we've got the government, they've got a mission for all of New Zealand to be carbon neutral by 2050. The public sector themselves, so all of the government departments and their, the local dock office in your region, they all need to be carbon neutral by 2025. So really that's less than 4 years away. And so they are working fast to decarbonise. So you'll see more electric vehicles in the regions as all of the government departments start driving around in electric vehicles. They're all looking at how they decrease their carbon. So that will affect a lot of our members. Yeah. That will affect, if you currently have a small accommodation or a large hotel or whatever, and you have government contracts where you have people come and stay, in a few years they're going to be preferring contracts or places that are already zero carbon. They're already working on that, reducing their own carbon footprint, because that's going to then help the government's own accounting around carbon. So it is going to be a whole lot of pressure come on different parts of business for us all to be starting to measure our carbon and reduce it in the different ways that we can, that's applicable for our own business.
Okay, so I just had a little mild panic attack because 2025 is really not far away. So can I just pick the bones out of what do we mean by offsetting? What does that mean to a tourism operator?
Okay, so there is confusion around offsetting. It doesn't have to be super complicated, but basically it means you measure all your emissions, how much power you use, how much petrol you buy, how much waste you create. So that gets measured. And then you work to minimise that as much as you can. But if you're still in business, realistically, you won't be able to cut all your emissions out. There will be some left. And they're usually measured in tonnes of carbon tonnes. And so then you can offset those with another company. So you'll get certified. You can get a rough idea of your emissions through online calculators, absolutely free. But to do it all properly, you would work with a company such as ECOS or Toitu, and they will help guide you through that to measure it accurately. And then what you can't reduce, totally cut out, you offset by purchasing trees which absorb carbon. And so that would counter. So it's actually net zero. It's not that you're producing zero emissions, but net zero by the time you've invested in these trees. And what's important is that when you're doing this within certified forests through a company, they're trees which would not have been planted had you not invested in them. So it's extra trees on the planet. So and so the two main companies that tourism operators use in New Zealand are Toitu and ECOS, and they have some forests locally that you can then invest in and some further afield as well. But it sounds kind of complicated, and it is more complicated than I'm making it, but it's from businesses that have done it, they've all told me it was actually easier than they thought and less expensive than they had anticipated. That's a really clear message that I'm getting back. But it is a bit of a process.
For example, one of the businesses we've been working with here in Wellington, they thought, it sounded scary. They didn't understand it. They rang ECOS. They had someone help them input all of their information. They did it all in 1.5 hours. They found out their carbon
so it's really quite easy.
Well, it depends on the size of your business. So if you're a small business, it is quite easy. Some of the other businesses we're working with have actually done free carbon calculators because they're not in a position at the moment to pay. So there is that option as well. You don't have to go out and purchase that service with someone. You can just use a free spreadsheet. And there are free spreadsheets there's a tourism specific one actually on the ECOS website. ECOS is spelled EKOS. We'll make sure that gets put in the
we'll get that up.
chat as well. Yeah. So they have a free tourism calculator, which is a light calculator. So you can just pop all of your information in and get an idea of what your carbon footprint is. And then you'll have an idea of what it would cost if you were to offset. And then, of course, you have the fee for the organisation to help you. But it doesn't mean you need to jump straight into that, is what I'm saying. There are ways for you just to gently start on that journey. But if you're a small business, it doesn't cost much, and then you can have a badge of being, net zero carbon, net zero if that's what you choose.
And so, I know, Gisela, when you were in your previous role, there was a real push around that carbon neutral kind of travel. Between the two of you, what are you seeing? I mean, we know that there's going to be a push by government to move this way, but what are you seeing from a consumer point of view? What are you hearing, and what secrets can you tell us to help us kind of pull our finger out and speed up this process?
Look, behaviour change is happening. I would say, like we talked about earlier, that New Zealand's not the quickest off the mark from a consumer perspective, but it is starting. But we want to be really, really welcoming to our international visitors, and I think that's where we will feel a strong consumer demand for this. Yep. Yeah, and consumers asking about it more directly than a Kiwi typically would. That's definitely what we're hearing. Have you got things to add to that, Megan?
Well, yeah, there was some Booking.com research a few months ago that indicated that consumers are going to be more concerned about sustainability in general, but carbon footprints. Yep. So, and there's more and more research coming out like that. I think some regions in New Zealand are actually doing it from grassroots. So I live in Wanaka, and there's a real grassroots movement there. We just had the WOW Summit a couple of weeks ago, which we talked about regenerative tourism for a whole day. And there were, 100 people in each session and a whole lot online. Nelson, of course, has got their carbon zero itinerary. We've got other regions that are also doing grassroots stuff in this space. And a lot of regional tourism organisations have put regenerative tourism, sustainable tourism into their destination management plans. So we're going to see more support from each RTO. So it's not just government. I think it's happening from industry, and it's also happening from a grassroots space in communities.
Yeah. And I guess the reason why we have introduced this to our region, and that's really part of Destination Marlborough's, destination management plan, but also just the fact that we could see a gap in the knowledge. I know my knowledge is not strong on the topic, and how can we support those if we don't actually know enough ourselves? And as I've mentioned to both of you separately, we have to start the conversation, and we do have to change that mindset. But we don't know what we don't know.
Yep. Yeah.
And that's what we need to.
Things are changing fast. We're all learning. We're all on this journey to do things better. And so, it's no problem with admitting that you don't understand something or don't know about it, because we're all learning and things are changing really, really quickly. So there's absolutely no shame in that. yeah.
Yep.
And little steps are good. Like, it doesn't have to be that you jump straight into measuring your carbon.
Yeah.
You might go, I'm going to just start with doing something really easy. I'm going to look at my rubbish bin and go, oh, what's a different way of getting this? How can I support a local someone down the road and get this wrapped in paper instead of plastic? So it's just might be really small steps that you can make that make a difference, and then you do one thing that month, and the next month you do another small step, and small steps, if you do it consistently, can actually add up to bigger change.
So can I ask, what would be something that has been a change in a business that has probably had the most impact? Like, what is something that you've seen or heard or know of through businesses that have made some changes?
Ooh.
I didn't prepare you for this one either, so
no, that's okay. Well, I'll give an example of a biggish business, and that's Real New Zealand, or Real Journeys, or the Wayfair Group, whatever way.
Yeah, it depends on when you checked in and checked out. Yes,
they're now called Real New Zealand. So they joined the TSC in 2017. And they have a supply chain manager, because they've got lots of parts of the business to buy for, so they do all the buying for all of the different products and the arrangements and things. And they just committed to look at how can they supply things differently, how can they reduce waste in their businesses, etc. So in that supply chain space, they have consistently done different things each month or every quarter over the last 4 years, and it's led to making a big difference. So to the point now where in some of their products, so let's take the ski fields, Treble Cone and Cardrona, this year they said to their customers, okay, we're not having any rubbish bins, there is no rubbish on our mountain. Please don't bring anything. So they've got to that point, which actually meant that they could not produce rubbish either. So it wasn't just putting the problem on their visitors to not bring stuff in their lunch boxes that was going to have to go in the rubbish bin. It was about them going, what do we have here? What do we supply our guests? So then they put pressure back on their suppliers, like their cookie suppliers, to come up with compostable packaging. They got rid of plastic drink bottles. They have drink fountains. They have post mix for drinks. So they've got rid of all waste out of their system by smart thinking over a period of time. So that's an example of, and actually they would say to me, they're not a big business. They're actually a whole lot of smaller businesses, and they've done things that anybody could do. Yeah, that's
really interesting, and that's a bold move, because I remember when they came out with that, and I thought, whew, that's going to be a good one, isn't it? But like you said, it's obviously evolved over a long period of time, and as we were saying before, it obviously started with a small step.
They got rid of plastic water bottles first. They said this is ridiculous, and they had to, I know their accounts said, oh my gosh, but we make X number of dollars per annum by selling bottled water, and they said we don't want to have to deal with, we don't want to be having all that plastic to deal with and get rid of. We'll put in drinking fountains, and that means that they're going to have $5 in their pocket to spend on something else. It's up to us to create that something else that they'll want to buy that doesn't create any waste. So quite a different way of thinking.
It is, and I think anyone that actually watches this to this point in our session, if you are a business and you could just stop using plastic water bottles, just as a small step, that would make a big difference, wouldn't it? And can I also say one thing that really gets my goat going is disposable masks. I would love to see more people with masks that are reusable.
Yeah, COVID's brought in some really different challenges, and it's kind of pushed sustainability back down the agenda a little bit. It's, we've got this urgent health situation, and it's really interesting, the change of dynamics. But if we're keeping our eye on the long term, then this sustainability, doing tourism in a way that's really good for New Zealand in the long run, that's got to be a big goal, because it's not going to go away in a hurry.
Yeah, no, it's not. Now, we have pushed the time limit just a little bit further than what I would have liked to, because it always goes so quickly. And I've really enjoyed this conversation. I feel like we've just opened a little door. It's just kind of like a little creak. Actually, it's probably more like a ambulance or a police car going past. It just kind of was really quick. So I'm really looking forward to what's going to roll out next week. So we've got our sustainability workshop starting off in Nelson on Monday, and then Marlborough, and then heading down to Kakura and Hurunui, one after the other. So if you are in any of those regions, these lovely ladies will be there available to ask any of your questions. I don't think any of them will be as ignorant as mine. So I challenge people to come and ask as many questions as possible. But what I love about this is that the conversation is starting, and to both of you, we will no doubt see you again in our region, but also here, because I feel that this is just the beginning of a conversation, and we have to keep talking, because if we don't put it out there, it's like marketing. If we don't talk about it, we don't show what we do, it just won't change. And we need everyone. We really need everyone to get on board, don't we?
We do.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's the kind of these issues, no one can solve them alone, and sometimes people get a bit overwhelmed thinking, what difference am I going to make? But it's only through doing stuff together and getting the whole country going down this path. Yeah, what's that, like that good old saying, a problem shared is a problem halved. So let's do it together.
Yeah, and you don't have to research all the local solutions yourself, because someone else would have already researched it. So it's really important that we collaborate. Yeah.
I'm so glad I've met you two, because I've got no idea. But so thank you very much for your time. And I'm happy to admit that I don't know something, especially when I've got good people like yourselves around to ask. So it just makes it easy. I look forward to seeing you both in the region next week. Thank you for your time. I know that you're both in Wellington at the moment, so you are both busy, and I really, really appreciate it. And I look forward to seeing what grows from this first step that we're making in the top of the South here. But to anyone that's watching, if you do love what we do, please like, share, or follow. Drop in a comment. We love what we do because you love what we do. So thank you. And one last time, Megan, Gisela, thank you so much. And happy travels around the top of the South.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll see you later, everyone. Bye.
Okay.
Bye.